Hello, another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast. Just want to say thank you for everyone that's joined recently, been jumping on the socials on everything. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed the rugby return. Obviously we had Matt Marriott on, done a PWR special. Obviously some great games for the first start of the season, so looks like that's going to be one hell of a competition to keep an eye on as well. So everyone hopefully enjoyed that. Obviously I know it was a different type of one that we normally do. Obviously journo on, slightly different way of understanding the game, but the game ticks in many different ways, so there's a whole point of this podcast is to understand all the ways it does. So this week another one again, we've gone for a performance analyst this time, so somebody that sits there and crunches the data and understands how and where the game needs to be won and how it can be won through different previous pieces. And we've got Tom Martin on, so All Black Sevens analysis for the last 8 seasons, 2 Olympic cycles. Obviously done the interview with him now, and what a bloke, what a knowledge of the game, a love for the game. He's been around for a while, started in England, ended up following the World Cup around in 2003, then ended up back over in New Zealand and for the last 20 odd years, and hasn't left. He loves the game, understands the game, He's played at 10 when he was playing, so he understands how it ticks, and now is able to fully involved in all of the understanding of the All Black Sevens and Olympic cycles. And obviously we talk about how COVID sort of mixed everything up a little bit as well, so that was quite interesting to understand that. So really top bloke, he's been around the game for a while now, come across some very, very top level players as well over in New Zealand, and was able to articulate the game and how the game should be played and how the analysis actually helps everyone else tick, and the emphasis now on the mental side of the game. And it was really interesting to understand those bits from behind the scenes as well. It's easy to see everything on the pitch and from the coaches and the director of rugby's, but there is somebody's actually got to supply them with the data and how that gets to them as well. So really good top bloke, really, really decent one as well. It was really early doors for him, but really late night for me, but 100% worthwhile. Another great interview with a great guest. Let's get on with it. This week, as mentioned, we've got Tom Martin on. Tom's in a completely different time zone to me. This is what's 7:30 in the morning for you, Tom, as we're recording this, and about 8:30 at night for me. You're a day ahead, so it's like talking into the future. It's one of them. But Tom, really appreciate your time for jumping on, mate. As I mentioned in the little at the end of the last pod, your current role was All Black Sevens performance analyst. Is that correct?
Yeah, sort of analyst then, and moved into sort of strategy, I suppose. Yeah.
Nice. So obviously for those that don't know you, can you do an intro for what you've done, where you've been, your rugby journey, and how you sort of ended up in the role you're doing now?
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, look, thanks for having me on. I said before, it's my first podcast, so thanks for having me, and looking forward to sort of sharing some stories and helping viewers or listeners hear about what happens probably behind the scenes. Something we talk about is we're probably the team behind the team. That just helps them with information and then allowing people to make informed decisions. But I suppose my rugby journey it's probably been a little bit of a gypsy the last sort of 20 years, sort of globe-trotting around the world. But I was introduced to rugby, I suppose, like most rugby people through my dad. So he was obviously an avid rugby man, played for a team called Old Meadonians, but they've rebranded into a team called Chiswick Rugby. So spent a bit of time down there, sort of next to St Paul's school there in Barnes. So, sort of grew up and around there, played mini rugby at London Scottish of all places. So that was sort of where I got my introduction to rugby. And then I sort of moved out of rugby for a little bit of time and got myself into some judo and a few other different sports before I went to secondary school and sort of picked up the game again, 13, 14, I suppose, and then played all through my time at school. Lucky enough to make the first 15 as a fifth year, so I think that's year 11, what people call it these days. So had a good 3 years playing first 15. The school I went to was Gunnersbury School, just there in Brentford, just along the right there, just close to Brentford Football Stadium as it was back then, Griffin Park. But
The old
That's
Griffin
since
Park,
been since been knocked down now, but obviously grew up around there as well, so it was nice and local for me. And then I headed off to university, so I was lucky enough to get a spot at St Mary's University in Strawberry Hill or Twickenham. So I did
wow.
a 4-year teaching degree there, which was great fun. Probably at the time of my life, like most people do when they go to university, and played for the college team, and played for a sort of junior club when I was at university called Grasshoppers, just up there on Gillette Corner. Those that sort of know Isleworth and Brentford. So I played there for sort of 3 years. And then when I left university in 2000, I shifted across I started playing at London Welsh. So started in their sort of academy, sort of second team, and worked my way up. So I had 2 years there. Had another great time. I was a newly qualified teacher, so I was sort of learning my craft, teaching at a school called Isleworth and Syme, which was, again, sort of local comprehensive school, but sort of learnt my craft there, and obviously got all my papers done to be a qualified teacher. And then from there I thought, well, if this is teaching, I reckon I'm done. It was quite a challenging time for me, really, just sort of learning how to deal with a multitude of different sort of scenarios that you don't necessarily get at university, with students having some pretty challenging backgrounds, with a whole lot of issues that come with different social dynamics as well, and demographic too, so I picked up a job with the RFU, doing some coach development work. So I did that for about 5 months. They only got a small amount of funding, and I did it through Middlesex County Rugby as well. So my former coach actually asked if I was available, so I played sort of under 17, 19s, 21s, bit of senior county rugby too. So Middlesex was my county, so I enjoyed my time with them as well.
What position did you play, Tom?
So I played number 10. So yeah. So
nice.
Lots of catching and passing and kicking, I suppose. Not too much defence.
Just leaving that for everyone else to deal with.
That's the seventh job. Yeah,
that's it.
So I did that for about 5 months, but part of that was linking in with Brunel University. So that was helping all their first and second year sort of PE students and sports science students get through their coaching level 1 through the RFU. So that was a really good time, actually, sort of linking in with local schools, getting some of these. We had a guy called John Pederamidis who was playing at Harlequins, and as a friend of mine from St Mary's, he did quite a bit of coaching, which was good for him. So he had some good guys that could come in and deliver to the students to sort of grow the game. And then they're getting their coaching levels as well. So, and they got a little bit of cash on the side, which probably helped them, as what it's like being a student when you don't have a lot of money, trying to pay rent and stuff like that. So and I did a little bit of coaching with that Brunel First 15, the college side, which was sort of part of it. And then due to funding and things like that, the sort of role disestablished, which was, I suppose, the way of the world some days. But then I picked up a job at a British school in Holland. So 2003, I shifted over to a place called Leiden, which is, I suppose, it's the university town in Holland. So it's about an hour drive from Amsterdam. So you fly into Schiphol, which is the airport, and then you sort of go left to Amsterdam or right to Leiden. So Leiden's probably like Amsterdam, but without the red lights. Like it's quite a cool little city. So I was there for about 10 months, and the opportunity arose because my old first 15 coach, a guy called Ian Christoviak, he'd had a opportunity to go and coach at San Diego University. So they were just looking for someone to cover the void while he did that. So it was actually a great fit, from finishing with the RFU to picking up that job for 10 months, coaching the first 15, sort of driving the rugby program to what was already there. So sort of helping staff have confidence in coaching the game, I suppose. And played for a couple.
That was 2003 then. Was there much of a sort of game to Holland then? Was that quite big, or was that still very grassroots?
There was. They had a national side. They had 4 district teams, and they had in the Premier Comp, which was sort of Holland wide, there was about 12 teams.
Wow!
So I played for a team called Dioc. So Dioc were quite an interesting team. They're a great bunch of lads. There was a guy called Robert Broers who was the coach. He was a former number 7 for Holland, and obviously quite highly regarded. in terms of his ability to play the game. But yeah, he was the coach, and ironically, I don't know if this is true because I never checked it, but they were in the Guinness Book of Records for winning a domestic comp 10 years in a row. So that was their claim to fame, apparently. So I took that as read and just ran with it. So I probably need to check that after making such a bold statement, you know.
Well, if they were claiming it, you got to take it. It's either
exactly
got to be written.
right.
That's down to their problem, not yours.
Yeah, exactly. So look, had a sort of great season there with them, and had an opportunity to play at the Amsterdam Sevens, the international sevens there, which was great fun. And then my time there finished in sort of the end of that year, which was sort of about August time. So 2003, I was like, what am I going to do now? Do I want to stay in the UK anymore? I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Australia and follow the World Cup around. So packed a bag, just a backpack and a little sort of hand luggage bag, and I thought, well, I'll have so I got my visa for Australia, and I got my visa for New Zealand at the same time. But New Zealand give you 12 months to get to New Zealand after you've been sort of given the visa. So I thought I'll do a year in Aussie and then do a year in New Zealand, and then I'll probably just come home. So here we are, 20 years later, I'm still in New Zealand, but followed the World Cup around.
Did you ever get the visa extended, or did you just never leave?
I never left.
Just not 100% legit. Like, this could completely undo all of it.
No, I wasn't quite, but so followed the World Cup around, which was like, mate, it was unbelievable. You know, England winning it as well, which was probably the icing on the cake. You know, like it was such a good atmosphere around Sydney, and then obviously the World Cup finished and had a new year, and then thought, well, what am I going to do from January? So I did a little bit of coaching. I got in touch with the Randwick Rugby Club because I was living in a little suburb called Maroubra, which is just up from Coogee Beach. So for those that know the sort of beaches around sort of Bondi coming back out, then that was a little spot I stayed in. But Maroubra is obviously near Redfern, which is sort of South Sydney Rabbitohs country for those that follow the Rugby League or the NRL.
Yeah.
And obviously the final was yesterday. So stayed there, did a bit of coaching at Randwick with their under-20s team. Then I was obviously teaching at a school called Cranbrook School. So I was like there's a guy called Ian Potts there who was the director of rugby, an English fella. So I sort of came in to support him around coaching the first 15, did a little bit with the second team, and just sort of supported the flagship teams like the under-14s and under-15s as well. And just had a little pathway running there. So I had a great time. Played at Randwick as well. Like sort of played through the grades. I said I was only there a season, so I was probably up and down the grades like a yo-yo. But I was more around just playing rugby, and because my first game, it was Anzac weekend. So Anzac weekend is Australian New Zealand Army Corps, and that's it's a bit like Remembrance Sunday, I suppose. So it's a weekend of let's say celebrating, but recognising those that have gone and given the ultimate sacrifice. Yeah. So we were playing Southern Districts, and I've been to a few trainings. So I started in the sixth at 9 o'clock in the morning, played 40 minutes, got pulled off at half time, started with the fifths at say 10:30, played a half of them, got pulled off, went fourth, third, seconds. What did I play seconds? I can't remember, but I had about, I don't know, heaps of rugby. Beautiful Sydney day, roamed about. Yeah, guys like, what do you reckon? I was like, this is pretty good because you could just play loads of rugby and have some fun and get to the beach and drink some beers and just enjoy what Sydney was, you know.
Yeah, perfect.
And then sort of later on in the year when the school was sort of packed up, I was thinking, right, I need to sort of shift myself off to New Zealand and get myself moving there. And I suppose being young, you sort of chance your arm a wee bit. So there was a job at South Canterbury Rugby, which is a provincial union here in New Zealand, and as the head coaching job was available. So I put in an application for it.
Got to go for it.
And the CEO rang me, a guy called Paul Treves, who's actually still a good friend of mine now. Actually, he rang me and said, "Mate, you're dreaming, but we've got like a coach development role for you, which we think will be a good fit for you."
Perfect. Yeah, brilliant.
So I was like, wicked. So went across, worked for South Canterbury for about 4 months, a little township called Timaru. Played for Timaru Old Boys and was having a great time down there, doing a bit with South Canterbury Rugby and doing some coaching there as well. and off that helped me get to Mid Canterbury Rugby, which is about 80k up the highway towards Christchurch. So from there, worked for Mid Canterbury, worked with the Heartland team, which is sort of trying to describe what level that would be. Sort of in the UK, it's almost like a county 15. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like so it's not fully professional, but guys would get sort of $150 a game.
Yeah.
So they'd work all week, but most of them were, farm types, shearers and, driving combine harvesters and things like that. So like good crew, and a few of the boys came across the UK. A lot of them went to Scotland, played for Jed Forest up there, and got sort of a solid sort of contract out of that, and obviously had a great time too. So, and that really sort of helped me get into the coaching side of things, because Mid Canterbury falls under that sort of Canterbury Crusader umbrella. Had some really good opportunity up there. There's a couple of RDOs there called Lee Golding and Dave Perrin who really looked after me. So the All Blacks used to have certain clinics down there, like Mike Cron's based there, who's now the Australia coach. He was sort of running front row clinics and stuff like that. So I'd get up and just sort of sit and listen and just be in awe of it. And my first
just be around. Being around and just trying to suck in as much of the knowledge that was being thrown around.
Exactly. I mean, this was sort of 2005, 2006. So just as they were sort of launching into that 7 World Cup. And then I was invited along to coach at the sort of Crusader under-18 schools. So it was sort of, I was like, this is great, do some coaching.
Brilliant.
And the top, when was it, four trial teams? So what's that?
Really?
Probably top 100 guys from the region. And funnily enough, I mean, these guys will never remember who I am, but for my week, we had Owen Franks at tight prop and Colin Slade at number 10. So, the types of quality players that were kicking around then. I think Ryan Crotty was there as well.
Yeah.
But they've all, 2 years later, they were playing for the Canterbury team. So, it's really opened my eyes to New Zealand rugby around. They've got their sort of pathways and selections right. So, if you come to sort of Crusader schools, you're going to be into Canterbury, and the talent RD part's really good, because each provincial union has a group of RDOs that get around the schools, that get their eyes across a lot of players. And I suppose New Zealand rugby's biggest strength is probably also its biggest weakness. They've got a lot of top players come from very small rural regions, but their biggest challenge is obviously the finance. They don't have the big budgets like France and Japan and places like that. But so guys don't necessarily get missed so much, because in your region, so like Sam Kane's from Reparoa, which is a very small town in the Bay of Plenty, but there's enough people out there knowing where he was and that know who he was. Like Dan Carter's a good example at Ellesmere College, then was scholarship to Christchurch Boys, so there's a lot of good volunteers, so lots of good people that there's not necessarily lots of they just know, and there's not lots of paid roles in New Zealand, but lots of good people that love the game and can see a good rugby player when they see one. They just go, he's obviously very good,
and know the right people to call as well. That probably helps to make sure that the door is opened at the right time, rather than people
100%.
just over the pathway's clear by the sounds of it. If you've got a school system that's being picked up and everything, the rest, it's not just England. There's other other systems across the world, but that are a little bit unclear, and it's got certain bits. But by the sounds of it, New Zealand have pretty much got that nailed. Is that fair to say from what you've seen as well?
They've certainly got that talent ID part right, just in terms of the regions as well, identifying players, knowing where they're at. And certainly when I was at Mid Canterbury, I've obviously had some good discussions with Canterbury at the time. A guy, Matt Sexton, was the academy manager, who's sort of the under-20s campaign manager now, former hooker for Canterbury Crusaders. I remember just saying to him, look, if we've got guys that we think are good enough, and I'm not saying I'm going to send everybody, but there's the odd one or two that went up there. So there's a guy called Matt Thatcher ended up playing fullback for Canterbury, and so that was good from our region. We're not expecting anything back down the highway. We just want to make sure that the region and Canterbury is strong. So that took me to the end of 2006. Worked with some really good players, certainly in the local region with Mid Canterbury, and I suppose setting the scene down there was my first year. We had a couple of coaches who were really good, but they'd gone and got a lot of loan players and guys from out of the region to come and play. So the following year, myself and the CEO, a guy called Pete McGregor, we were like, we really need to reward people that are living in Ashburton and actually want to play for Mid Canterbury. If you're born and bred here, let's pick them. Now, if there's a real, what's the word? Like
ringer. That's a proper decent one.
There's a real, like, if we're really sure in a certain position, then we might go shopping. But generally, we should back our skills as coaches to help them be better.
Yeah.
And that was then my first introduction into sort of sports performance or sports analytics. So we thought, if we're going to try and be really good and help players be better, then let's buy some software. So we bought Sports Tech back then, which is now what Sports Code or Huddle Sports Code is now. So we bought that, and a guy called Jason Healy was the sales rep. Now Jason Healy is now the head of platforms and technology for New Zealand Rugby, and he's been a great support of mine for all my time in sevens. So meeting him then didn't really think anything of it, but the two coaches at the time, there was Trevor Boxer and Wayne Foxcroft. It was like, well, we need to get some really good examples of what good looks like. So if we talk about, I don't know, a midfield scrum in our own 22 and we need to exit, well, what does good look like? And we just went and found clips of what good was. Never thought of numbers or anything like that. We're always thinking how we can get players to understand what good is. Yeah. And I was obviously coaching the under-20s team, which just sort of fed through to that Heartland team. And there's also a development side as well. So, we had some really good fun, just like trialing things and trying to be innovative and trying to be creative. And then I'd got all my residency and all my papers through then. And I thought, what's my next move? And ironically, there was always, every year New Zealand Rugby ran a sort of rugby development conference or a sort of coaching conference up in a place called Palmerston North, which is about 150k north of Wellington. So so I got flown up, and they sort of helped people get there because they wanted good representation from around the country. So got there and was chatting to a few of the Wellington guys. So Wellington was quite unique back then. They had 15 clubs and then 15 RDOs in each club. So with your club, you had X amount of secondary schools, but then part of your job was then working for the union, but also working for your club. So the club was getting benefit from a sort of paid employee, but the union were getting the benefit of more eyes around all the schools.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I was chatting to a guy called Rick Futterow, who's actually the academy manager in Wellington now, just through over a beer. And I was like, mate, I'm looking to try and get out of Ashburton. Much as it's a great spot, it's rural New Zealand, and I probably want to get to a big city, you know. Yeah. Going from sort of London, Amsterdam, Sydney, Timaru, Ashburton, she was interesting times.
To the back of nowhere was probably a bit of a change of pace, yeah.
Exactly. So managed to, he teamed me up with a guy called Scott Crichton, who was a former prop for Wellington and former All Black as well, and went on their Cavaliers tour in 83. So he was a good sort of ally, I suppose, to get me to Wellington. And I linked him with a club called Western Suburbs. So got to Wellington and sort of my coaching journey continued. I still played, so I played for Western Suburbs, doing all that sort of talent ID for Wellington. And then over my 10 years in Wellington, I did things like the Wellington under-20s. Well, it was under-21s back then. Then it moved to Wellington 20s, did Wellington 7s, did the development side. And the other person that was involved at the club was a guy called Alama Iramir. So he'd just come back from Japan.
Right.
And he was the Lions coach in 2007. And then in 2008, he transitioned into the academy coach. So Alama's currently coaching in the US. I think he's doing a bit with the Eagles as well. But he was a really good sort of helper for me as well, I suppose, like Scott Crichton. So when he moved into the academy space, he was speaking to Rick Futterow, who was an RDO like me at the time, said, I'm trying to find someone that can do some video analysis. So Rick's like, you should give Tom a call because he's done a bit of that. So Alama, because he was at Western Suburbs as well, so we're at the same club. He was like, well, mate, what do you reckon? And I was like, well, yeah, I can do it, but very sort of not really sure what I was signing up for. But essentially, it was then doing some filming with the academy boys, but then also cutting it up in terms of, again, what good looked like without necessarily having any of the numbers that are associated with it. So went on a couple of courses, got upskilled and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I did 2 years of that, which was great. And then a guy, Alistair Rogers, became the All Blacks analyst, and he moved away from Verisco, which was the analysis software, sort of year 2007, 8, and we moved. Then sort of Sports Code took over. So he was with the All Blacks through till 2015, and he was also a Western Suburbs guy as well. So got to meet him a few times, and he's been with the Fiji Drua and the Blues. He's done quite a lot of coaching since leaving the All Blacks. So yeah, did 2 years with them, and was like, Alama got a role with the Hurricanes. So I was like, well, that's that done. And I went and did. Western Suburbs sort of fell out the leagues just through some clerical errors around registration of players, and they dropped into the second div, and then the club sort of struggled to get back up again. But they still run an under 85s team, and they got a really strong junior club as well. But it's a shame they sort of fell over in the end. And I finished with them 2009 as well, and then I think it was 2011 they sort of fell over, really, which was a real shame because they were a good club, a lot of good players. So I moved to a club called Northern United and a place called Porrua, which is a sort of city north of Wellington. I had I was there for 2 years as Premier coach, but I was still doing a bit of work for the union, so it was all sort of intertwining. Like I was saying before, you know, biggest strengths, your biggest weakness, you know. So doing some good jobs for Wellington and coaching Premier Rugby, but there wasn't a lot of budget flying around, which was fine. I wasn't necessarily looking for that. It was more
it's rugby, and there's not much of a budget, and that is potentially why the game's not grown as much as it should. It's always been run on a shoestring across the world, and it's a game we love, but it could be so much further along if we could somehow open someone's purse strings or run it properly.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, you can sort of pick up some good jobs in New Zealand, not necessarily get paid for it, but people do it because, A, they love it, and you're dealing with some great footballers as well. So, did Norths for a couple of years. Then I jumped across and did a year at Petone Rugby Club. And then sort of 2013, Alama got back in touch saying, oh, look, we're trying to get a Hurricanes development team up and running. And I was wondering if you're interested to come and do some analysis work. And I was like, yeah, I reckon I could probably do that. But then from probably a selfish point of view, it was like I can learn sports code, I can sort of get up to date, understand a little bit more. Jason Healy had just been appointed as the head of performance analysis at NZR, who was obviously the sales rep from 2005, 2006. So reconnected with him, and Dan Cron was the analyst at the Hurricanes at the time, with another guy called Jason Ross, who's still there, Dan Cron's now doing some coaching with the Black Ferns 15s, but you know, he's the son of Mike Cron, you know, so well versed in what's going on. So had a lot of good times there doing the sort of development stuff, learning the ropes, and then I was doing some stuff, just game days for the Hurricanes, so I just walked the sideline. So Richard Watt was the forwards coach, and obviously Dan was the scrum coach. So I was just getting scrums and lineouts from the other side of the broadcast. So it's the best seat in the house. So for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I just, home games, I just walked the sideline with my camera and just knowing that I'm adding value, and then work with the development side, under 20s, sort of get immersed in it, but still had a part-time role with with Wellington Rugby, and was doing some study as well and doing a bit of relief teaching at Wellington College. So I was sort of making the best of a bad job, really. It sort of helped me understand, you know, the in-depths of the analytics and how it can actually inform decision-making. So then Dan helped me get a job with the Manawatu Rugby Union, with the Turbos in the NPC. So that was great, but I think people say to me, your biggest strength is because you've done quite a lot of coaching, you know, various levels at club, at representative, and even at NPC level. You just sort of, you can sort of second guess what a coach would want to know, or how can the coding reflect what they'd need to be looking at to help them for their training week the following week. So, yeah, just sort of immersed in that, got upskilled, did a couple of years with the Manawatu. And then in 2017, Clark Laidlaw was appointed as the Sevens coach. He was still tied up with London Irish, so he couldn't get back until, I think it was till July maybe. So I came on board in the January of 2017 thinking that I'll only get 6 months. But the reason I got pushed to Sevens, I'd done 3 years with New Zealand schools and a couple of years sort of resourcing in the under-20s program. Just around, like any trial weekend or sort of camps, it's sort of running a bit of cable, getting some footage, and then feeding to the coaches around each positional area. So, like, there was always scrums and lineouts, and they're getting the top. I mean, I did some halfback stuff one year, and there's probably about 6 halfbacks. So they just wanted some individual skill sessions on them, and then they could start making decisions on who's 1 and who's 6 and who's 3. You know what I mean? So you can get your rankings right. Certainly around the profiling of how you then want to play the game. So that was another good sort of learning really for me around the analysis side of things, of how obviously how important it is, you know. So yeah, started Sevens, did my sort of 6 months, wasn't sure what was happening, and then Clark was sort of like, well, mate, do you want to sign on another 1 more year through to 2018, to the end of the season, which culminated in the Rugby World Cup in San Francisco. So I was like, yeah, I reckon I'll probably do that. So I signed another year. And then after that, I then re-signed through to Tokyo Olympics. But then obviously COVID hit, and there was a whole lot of, you know, like the rest of the world, there was some difficult times, and quite a few of us had 3 months of unpaid leave. They just said, look, we just can't really afford to do anything, which was, you know, which was fair. And so I picked up some teaching work, picked up some more coaching work, got back to Norths and back into Wellington because the country had shut down. And then we obviously came out the back of that, and we were obviously trying to prepare for an Olympics, which was a challenge, but it was also,
that must have been a really mad experience trying to preparing for an Olympics, then it getting on hold, and then even up to the day of the actual Olympics, it didn't seem like it was going to be on either, did it? It was like, is it going to happen? So you could have like literally got there and then game over again. That must have been such a weird piece to work on. I know these athletes, they're all prime and they're top, but like to analyse everything up to that point, then it stops, then it starts again, and then there's a big gap of, you don't actually know what they've done for that period. So your analysis could be completely out of the window because of a 1 year break of nobody seeing anything. So how did you manage around that? Because that must have been really, really odd to deal with.
It was. The challenge for us in New Zealand was you couldn't get in and you couldn't get, you could get out, you couldn't get back in. So when the rest of the world sort of started up again in that sort of 20, I think it was 21, 22, the end of sort of 21 after the Olympics, it was, we were having to manufacture quite a lot of stuff. So trying to get teams in, you know, get a few invitational teams going. We ran a Red Bull Ignite, which was good to sort of help with the next sort of crop of players coming through. But it was a challenging time because the season of sort of 1920, we'd just come back from Vancouver. And that was the sort of year of, and then COVID hit in that sort of April time, I think it was. We were humming.
March, I think, our end. I think March it hit. So it's crazy.
It was madness, really, because we were like, well, everything's just stopped, and we were in such a good spot, and you know, we'd worked quite hard on a few different strategies here and there, and then sort of go on hold for a year, and other teams just, as you say, moving on and developing, just like we were as well. And people didn't really know what was going to happen or what it was going to be like. But playing in stadiums with no fans and stuff like that was certainly different as well. But managing to get there and get a silver was awesome. But straight afterwards, it's a very odd feeling because if you're in 100 metres, you're on the line and everyone goes at the same time and you win a gold, win a silver, win a bronze. But we lost and won a silver, if that makes sense. So it's just a bit of a, like, mate, don't get me wrong, I'm hugely proud of the group, but it's a very sort of surreal feeling straight after. It's like, well, you should be really happy here, but we are. But
but
geez,
we're
you know,
not.
it's just,
Yeah,
you were not. Yeah. So, having that and working through that, and we had some wonderful people around the mental skills part of the game. A guy called David Galbraith, who's sort of world renowned. He's worked with Japan, worked with the Highlanders, done a lot of individual sports. He was really good in that sort of time through COVID around making sure guys were well connected and working through different strategies they needed to get themselves through that.
yeah,
Which was hugely important because some guys, if you've got a lot of time to think and you're sort of isolated and there's only you at home, or
yeah,
there's quite a lot to unpack there. And I think there's still some sort of symptoms coming in society now off the back of COVID.
yeah,
Certainly kids these days on screens and feeling anxious going to crowded places and things like that. So
yeah.
that's obviously a sort of byproduct of that. But I think understanding that, and certainly the young players we have coming in good spot. So, but yeah, it was a tricky time, like it was for everybody. But we sort of had to dust ourselves down and get going again.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing was we got back. We obviously had to isolate for 2 weeks, and then we sort of came out for 2 days, and then the country went into a countrywide lockdown again. So we had another probably month of lockdowns in New Zealand. So it was I mean, for some of the players, it was probably a challenging time. Certainly for the travelling reserves, because we got to Tokyo. Let's say it was 10 days or 2 weeks before, it was something like that. They were in lockdown. Then they fly back to New Zealand, lockdown. So that's now a month already, out for 2 days, another month. And one of the boys was up in Auckland, Caleb Clark, who was in Auckland. He had another 2 or 3, probably another 2 months of lockdowns in Auckland, or on and offs, like it was sort of, we're out for a couple of days on out, we're back in the lockdown again. So there was, some challenging times for the players around that sort of timings of lockdowns, and can't go anywhere and you need to stay local and that sort of thing. So
Because that also then impacted onto the next cycle as well for the Paris Olympics, didn't it? Because
it
that
did,
was
yeah.
basically a year late, so it sort of shortened your window, and then it sort of carried on. Do you reckon you probably lost another 6 months on top? Do you think you only really had 2.5 years to sort of prep for this Olympic cycle rather than a 4? Or
Yeah, I think I'll say the challenge or the difference when the series started up again. Obviously, us, Fiji, and Samoa didn't get there, but teams like Germany and Uruguay and teams like that could come in, which was great for those teams to actually get it up and running.
Yeah.
But then we obviously came out of lockdown in the February of 22, so the year was condensed and busy and long tours, just because of New Zealand's rules and their sort of cautiousness around it. Was if you had it, then you couldn't leave. So we decided that we'd go to Fiji because Fiji didn't really have any COVID at the time, and we could do some training camps there. Played against Fiji a few times, and then we could get off to the Singapore and Vancouver legs of that World Series of that year. So we missed the 2 Dubai legs and the 2 that were in Spain. I think it was Seville and Madrid, I think.
Probably,
I think Spain had a couple, So there was already 4 tournaments that we hadn't got to, which is, 6 games each tournament. So 18, 20 games that we'd missed out on. But so we were sort of manufacturing stuff back here as we had to sort of find ways to keep guys playing and keep developing their skills and their understanding. And then that year was another big year because we had a Commonwealth Games and a World Cup as well. So the Commonwealth Games were in Birmingham, and then the World Cup was in South Africa. But that year, Hong Kong had been cancelled. But the start of the 22-23 season, World Rugby so straight after the World Cup, which was in the September, Hong Kong was then again in the October. So I think it might have been November. So we had a month off, and we were straight back on the series again. So it went Hong Kong, then Dubai, Cape Town. So we had 11 tournaments that year.
Yeah, Christ.
So we were lucky to win the series that year, but it was a lot of time away, very condensed, especially off the back of the 22 season. So working through all of that, and I suppose with the improvement of technology, we would then be able to automate quite a lot of the information that we needed, which sort of freed me up then not necessarily doing loads of coding or loads of sort of data collection. It was like, that's all now sitting in the cloud. We can now start accessing that way more easily and just make the flow and the sort of stream of information way more concise.
Yeah.
And then we had a huge off season last year off the back of probably 2 years of big trips, lots of competition. Guys had to get their bodies fixed, like there's guys that were, battling with a few bits. So actually being able to stop and have an extended break was really good. Yeah. And then we obviously had a bit of a change in personnel leading into this year with Clark moving off to the Hurricanes, and then Tomasi stepping up to head coach, and then new captain, new leadership. So there's a few moving parts to all of that as well. But we're in a good spot rolling into Paris, winning sort of Hong Kong and Singapore. So but it's been 8 seasons is a long time.
Yeah,
I've had some fun with it, and I suppose the growth of the program over that time has been significant as well. And I suppose that's sort of my rugby journey to date. I suppose quite a lot of talking from me that side, I think.
That's brilliant. No, it's obviously it's great to understand. Obviously, the analysis piece is what you currently done, but obviously there is a journey to that point. And
yes,
obviously, being able to analyse the game, you must have obviously been able to play, and you've worked with people that would be able to. So, have you sort of gathered all of that knowledge from multiple people and just sort of mashed it together and thought, this is the best way for me to analyse the game, or this is how? Can you sort of analyse in different views? So you'd say, oh, actually, I know this coach is very similar to this coach. He'd like it like this, or she would like it like this because they've got this sort of understanding, or have you just got, this is how the model is fixed and this is how we present it, or is there ways that you can adapt it based on your knowledge of previous experiences?
Yeah, it's probably a sort of two-pronged attack, because most coaches I work with, they're probably all visual learners, like most rugby players. They like to sit and watch and just get a feel. So something we do with the footage is we call it databasing. So we can get, so for example, if you're a defence coach, you're with the Hurricanes and you're playing the Highlanders next week, we can give you all the Highlanders attack lineouts from their last 3 games. So you can then start to see, so in their own 22, what do they do? How do they set up their exits? 22 to 22, what sorts of line are they going? 6-man, 5-man. And then when they get into the attacking 22, teams are sort of going full lineouts, getting a bit of a drive on, and then looking for a bit more of a power sort of pick and go type game. So as I understand different coaches, you can start to give them certain things around numbers and information that can help them confirm generally what they know. I think where analysis sits at the moment is coaches will watch the game and afterwards they'll look at the footage and the numbers and it'll almost confirm what they've seen. But with the automated system we've now got, it's almost like if coaches are looking to preview, they can almost self-resource themselves now. So I'm not saying that the role of the analyst is not important or it's going to finish up, but I think with the improvements of AI and this machine learning, that having someone that can interpret the information and then present it to improve or help aid decision making is probably going to be where I think the analysis space is going to end up, because you don't necessarily need to sit there all the time coding the game, because that's already going to be happening for you. So a lot of what I was doing this year was more things around our own game. So how do we measure our structures? So how do we measure our exits? How do we measure our entries into 22? How do we measure that middle part of the field in terms of what our structure is? And then you can start to drop in your phase calls. So phase 1, phase 2, how are we going? And then a big thing we always look at, which we also get from our providers, is how we finish. So to give an example, if we finish positively, we've scored a try, like a line break try, tackle break try, penalty for us. Now, a negative finish would be handling error, contact error, tackled into touch. So it's basically the opposition are getting the ball off the back of what we've been doing.
Yeah.
So a little bit of work around with the players, understanding that if we can finish positively, we then get another crack with the ball. Okay. So we basically worked out if we got 3, we basically call them possession stacks. So if we go kick-off reception, we catch, we play, they come offside or they entry at the ruck, penalty. So we've now got the ball again, kick to the line out. That line out's now our second possession, one after the other. We play again, they come offside. If we get to 3, we generally score. 9 times out of 10, we'd be scoring a try. So guys understanding if we can be really efficient when we've got the ball, then we've got a good chance of winning. And then when the opposition have got the ball, we've just got to hold them for about 90 seconds, because the stats from World Rugby suggest that if you can hold a team to 90 seconds, their chance of scoring drop by about 60%. And that's either them making an error, blowing themselves out, or the refs involved. So if we can be neat and tidy at the breakdowns, paint good pictures, and like the old UFC adage, let's just keep the judges out of it. Let's keep the ref out of it by making sure we're technically correct and when we know the law, So if we can't get it ruck 1, we might get it ruck 2, or we'll certainly have a crack at ruck 3, or let them have it for 2 and we'll pile into the third ruck,
Yeah.
When you look at different teams and how they play, Whereas, I mean, if you compare Fiji to a Spain, Fiji are very much offloading, big power game. People say we try and stop the offloads, well, it's easier said than done at times, isn't it? And then, you think about Spain or Great Britain, for example. I mean, they're very much width to width, like to hold the ball, hold possession, go multiple phase. France were very much offloading with Dupont, a bit of a snipe and get their big players into the game. Ireland, a little bit did a little bit of both, sort of held the ball for a bit, but had McNulty and guys like that to be nice and direct for them. So, it's an interesting, I think the way sevens evolves and, it's easy, but it's not easy, if that makes sense. There's lots going on. It's chaotic. It's 6 games in 2 days. There's breaks between games. So it's quite an integrated performance model that you need to look at around the mental psyche, the fueling, the resting, the recovery, the analysis. So my biggest point was almost how much is too much and what do guys actually need to know.
Yeah.
So we spent quite a bit of time around that.
I was going to say that. How does the short time frame of a sevens tournament is literally you've got maybe 2 or 3 hours in between a game, etc. How do you convert that analysis without it being boring, switched off? No, have you literally got to filter that to the nth degree and think, actually, that's not really as important as it potentially looks? Or do you just present it back and everyone takes on board what they want? And how does that work? Because that's a very short time frame to make such an impact as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I first started, we did a lot of sort of information gathering, I suppose. So we were always looking at what are teams doing, how they're doing it, who are their key guys. So it's quite a sort of labour-intensive sort of getting the information. But as I've alluded to before, because we've now got it automated, it's fully information's going. All we're now looking to do is, so we basically we called it front loading. So before we go away, we already know who's in our pool, and you can almost sort of second guess who we may or may not play. So, like I said before, we can start to database the information of teams, and then we can start going. So Jason Healy, the guy I mentioned before, has been a huge help around Power BI and automating reports. We've got 4 seasons of rugby information from Opta, who is our sort of data provider, across any variable you can think of in rugby. Then we've got access to that.
That's quality.
So, and it's almost like not to sort of talk it up too much, but it's a world-class system. So we can look at for example, kickoffs is a great example. So we can look at South Africa as a good example because we played in the Olympics. So Selwyn Davids, what foot does he kick off?
Yeah.
Where does he kick? So we have all his distribution charts across all his kicks over. We can go 3 seasons if we want, but we just used one.
So when that's presented, does that just pop up like you see on the telly where it's got, he's done it? It literally looks like a driving range when you've been to the driving range and your ball's got all
so
of these.
there's lots of dots, but the way we deciphered it was, here's where he kicks, and then part of my role was to go through the footage to find out there's different types of kicks that he delivers on. So
of course.
There's a context to it. So you've got the distribution chart, and you got the video. So we know that he's a left footer.
Mm-hmm.
He generally kicks to the right hand side of the field. Now he can kick it deep as if it's down into the 22 to the touchline.
Yeah.
He can kick a traditional sort of sevens kickoff to drop it on the junction of the 10-metre line and the sideline. Yeah. And he's got like a little couple of chip kicks or flat kicks that he uses to the left as well. So being able to have those sort of context or contextual discussions with the player, say, this is how he kicks, this is where he kicks, here are a couple of types of kicks that he's got. And then if he's kicking to the left-hand side, he's quite deliberate.
Obviously, he was able to tell you where and how and what type of kick. Did that also... So during the game as well, does that outline when he kicked it in different positions? So say they were losing by 10 points or 15 points or ahead by X amount.
Yes.
Is that data available? That's bonkers if all of that is
that's not available. But going through the video, you can then say, well, they're up by 8. They're probably going to kick it long because now you've got to go 95 metres to score. So there's always the context to the kick. So if they're down by 2 and they need the ball back with 50 seconds to play, they're probably going to look at trying a little cheeky kick to get it back. So I suppose where we got to was, because we don't play every week, which is, and people can argue it's good and bad, what it does do, it gives you time to look at opposition, start looking at their trends, who their key guys are, what types of things do they run. So, like I was saying before, when we front load things, when we get to tournaments, when we're watching games, it's then, are they doing anything different to what we already know about? So South Africa or Argentina, because we played them a lot in the last couple of years, are they doing anything different to what we already know about from an attack point of view and from a defence point of view and from a restart set piece point of view? Now, if the answer is no, right, boys, let's go play sevens. Because we already... And then if they do pull a rabbit out of the hat or do something we've not seen before, well, they're trying to beat us. So you'd almost say, good on them, of course. So they're going to be keeping things up their sleeve all the time, and it's, smokes and mirrors. But we always talked about the 80-20. If we know 80% of the time what's generally happening, you're world-class rugby players. You're an All Black Sevens player for a reason. So your ability to adapt, 100%, totally.
You can plan everything, but it's the same old adage as well, isn't it? Like boxing, everyone's got a game plan until they get punched in the face. So
exactly.
If you don't know, if you've got that shirt on for a reason, you know how to play rugby, you know how to play footy. Like, just play what's in front of you. These are the numbers that are potentially going to happen. The rest of it, just go and have fun and make sure we win. And that's about it.
Exactly. I mean, and then we always used to talk to them about, what's your super strength? So what's the reason you're in the team? So like Scott Curry, good in the set piece, good on the edge, carries well. Dylan Collier, the same. Sam Dixon, like Tony Narshu, he's, great in the middle of the field, comes off the bench, teams are fatigued, and he can break the line and offload. Quila Rocky-Lesor, quickest man in the squad, hard to stop, nominated World Player of the Year. Leroy Carter's the same. Moses Leo, Regan Weir, all these guys are world-class sevens players. So what David Galbraith did, our mental skills guy, was, what are the things you're good at, but what are the things that worry you? So they had to do a little bit of work on themselves about what actually worries you. So is it the unknown that worries you, or is it Is it the pressure of a situation? Is it rolling into an Olympic quarter final? Is it a World Cup final? So what are the strategies and things you can do just to keep yourself calm? Because we used to talk about things, well, we could be down by 3 tries after 5 minutes. Well, what are we going to do then? So, and ironically, that happened in Vancouver, or probably 2019.
Yeah.
We played Scotland, we were down 21-0 after 6 minutes. It's like, geez, we need to. So, but the work that DG or David Galbraith had done was we just need to take a breath, be calm, stick to the process. So then we scored just before half time, 21-7, got the kickoff back, scored again. Now we're back in the game. So that whole 80-20, like we could start really poorly, but we've just got to back ourselves to, back our skills, back each other. And then the other great example was South Africa 2018. We'd lost to USA, beaten Australia, and we had to beat South Africa by, I think we just had to beat them. Otherwise, it'd been the first time in our history we wouldn't have made the top 8. So we were down by 12 points with a minute to play. We had a line out. We scored, kicked the goal, come back, kicked off, got it back, 2 phases, score in the corner. We were like that. How the hell did that just happen? You know what I mean?
I can imagine. Wow.
And there's other examples where we've not got it right and we haven't made the top 8, like against Australia in Toulouse, they just got a roll on and kept rolling sort of thing. So, that's, and like I was saying before, that sort of integrated performance model of where's the analysis sit, where does the mental skill stuff sit, where does all that recovery stuff sit, so guys can feel like there's some, when they're downtime, it's downtime. When it's ready to work, it's ready to work. And I think I was chatting to a guy at Bay of Plenty Rugby he was a first responder for a while in the New Zealand Police and in the fire service. So I suppose military examples are quite good as well around, if you're sort of sitting about waiting for something to happen, like an SAS soldier would be a good example. You're sitting around, we're on, oh no, we're off, or we're on, we're now off again, we're on, so that ability to switch off and build your strategy around that. Now, that's a very extreme example because they're dealing with life and death. We're just talking about a game of rugby, But sometimes when you don't win, it does feel a bit like life and death, because it's the expectation that comes with it. But that's why we do it, isn't it? We do it because we love it. It's high performance. It's representing our country, representing our families, and something that Tomasi Farmer always used to talk about. He used to say, on the front of your jersey in sevens is is the team you're playing for, is the country. But on the back of your jersey is your name. So that's who you're playing for. So you've got your country, and then you represent your family. So make sure you do that name proud as well by how you prepare, how you get ready between tournaments, how you play in tournaments. If you don't get selected, how do you respond? There's all the sort of things that come with high performance sport that you've just got to work your way through and be disappointed, and that's okay. But also then know what's my plan to get back in, or long-term injuries is another thing where guys can find it very difficult. So having those networks and support mechanisms to make sure players are actually okay, and if they need to have a bit of a time off or decompression time, then that's what they need to do.
So the impact of mental understanding of the game must have, and like the mental decision making, must have a massive bearing on the modern game. Like back in the days, it obviously wasn't as much of a focus, as we all know, but that must literally be now deemed as probably one of the highest critical requirements for a high performance team. Is that pretty much where you see it as well? That's such a big part of the game now, is to make sure everyone's got the mind right and can literally react to everything.
I think the mindset's huge, but also then understanding the environment. How do we replicate that at training? So myself and Travis, who was the strength and conditioning coach, he's actually got a job with the New York Islanders in ice hockey. He's a Canadian and an ice hockey man by trade, but him and I were starting to build quite a bit of information around rugby and the GPS information. So how can we then mimic or create activities that then replicate certain situations in the game. So like a 3v2 or we'll build it up. So 1v1, 2v1, 3v2, 3v3 or a 4v3. So you can start to manipulate or manufacture certain scenarios and then the guys just play. So it's then just making sure that the loading plan is right. We're getting the rugby, but we're getting the mindset. So we used to talk about, we've got a learning session, which is, installing, discussing, make sure we're clear. And then we used to have performance sessions, which were right. This is going to be like game pace and we're ready to go. So if there's errors, if there's things aren't quite right, then we'll probably review that after. We won't necessarily stop there to discuss it, because if you miss a clean or you miss your roll or you do something that's not right or you do something that's really good, then you'll get the required feedback. And then Liam Barry, who used to be a forwards coach with us, him and David Nusafora, who was the head of high performance at Ireland Rugby for a while, and they were friends. They coached together at the Auckland Blues. David Nusafora used to comment about Seven, saying it's the ultimate game of consequence. So if you miss a tackle, you're under the post. If your pass isn't on the money, we knock it forward, opposition get the ball. So guys understanding now their ability to be efficient and consistent, and I've always talked about rugby is a game based on mistakes, isn't it? So you drop the ball, opposition get it. You kick it directly into touch, opposition get it. You don't kick it 10, you ruck entry, you don't roll. So the more efficient we can be and limit our mistakes, then the better position we're going to be in to win the game or win the tournament. And as Clark Laidlaw used to say, you don't win a tournament day one, but you can certainly lose one by not getting things right. And quarterfinals are probably the most crucial game in a sevens tournament. So it's been it's been a journey around information, improving decision making, what's important. And that's probably been the key one. Is I always we've got all this information. It's like an egg timer. So all the grains of sand. How many bits do the players actually need to see? So if I think of our current group, so young kids in the group, so what does someone need to know? Right, catch the ball. If there's no one in front of you, run. If there's someone in front of you, pass. You know what I mean? If someone in front of you with the ball, tackle them. If they don't, then just stay in the system and keep moving. So that's one discussion. And then Joe Webber, Regan Weir, sort of defence crew, so they might get a little bit more information. And then the set piece crew, the attack crew, they get a little bit more. And then us as staff might get a little bit more that we can then refer to if we need to. But making sure messaging is clear, it's not over cluttered, it's nice and concise. And ultimately, we're wanting to give guys confidence to go and play. And then I did some studies this year. We did quite a lot of work around kickoffs. So I was just giving databases of info, going, oh, mate, just go and watch these kickoffs and tell me what you see. And then we can go to our reporting system to see if you're right. Just come back and say, I think this and I think this. Let's check it. And every single time he was right. I said, my feedback to him was, mate, just what you see and what you feel is absolutely 100% correct.
Brilliant.
And if you've got confidence and you can articulate it confidently, people are just going to back you because we are one of the best players in the world. So if you say, they're kicking here, we're setting up here, let's go.
Does that happen quite often? They sort of slot in and just say, oh, I want to do that? Or is that just some players are just built that way? That's what they want to do, right? Yeah,
it's a little bit of,
but it's available
how that player is. I mean, I'm never on guys to do things from my experience. Yeah, exactly right. And I think of those young players I just spoke about, when they come into a full-time environment, they're living away from home for the first time. They've got to get their lifting right, their technique right, their nutrition right, their own home life off-field right. They've got bills to pay. Whereas I probably had more of a relationship with the senior players who have got all that sorted. So as a young professional, the last part they think about is probably the analytics or the analysis. But it's just, I just say, look, we use a platform called Huddle. If you can get on Huddle and just watch training, that's a start. Now, if you can cut clips and if you can do other bits, then as they become more professional and understand the
brilliant.
other moving parts to being a professional rugby player, then they'll get there, if that makes sense. So like Scott Curry and Sam Dixon, Dylan Collier, Joe Webber, they were not on me, but we'd have some good debates about the game, and or here's some more information for if you need it, or have you got any more context to this? And let's go, So it's definitely a two-way street,
Being part of
all
of that, everything you've done beforehand,
that type of thing as well. So.
What is the biggest achievement that you feel that you've managed in the game? Because we've discussed this with others previously, that it's brilliant to have all the trophies and all of these and all of that. But as we know, as coaches and other people within the game, sometimes just making that impact on one player or a group of players by being able to sort of address certain things and show them a different way of life. What is your biggest achievement you feel so far in the game?
I think sort of being able to sit with players and build their confidence in the game. Again, something else that we pushed through David Galbraith was we got players to build their own, we called them MOPs, so moments of perfection. So find some clips of what you do really well in a game of sevens, and that's the reason why you've been picked. And then what we did a few years ago, probably more sort of Clark's thinking around making sure guys can perform, not necessarily on the rugby field, but perform off the field under pressure. We used to have one-on-ones, so players would come in to a team meeting. So it'd be Clark, head coach, Tomasi, Liam Barry, David Galbraith, Blair Mills, who was the strength and conditioning coach at the time, and Damien Banks, who was the physio. Their one-on-ones were them talking about what their strengths are, what their areas of development are, what their strength and conditioning, areas are good and things they need some help with, and then their prehab, rehab. So basically the meeting was theirs to be prepared for, because as staff, we were like, well, we're not going to do all the work. You sit down and we just tell you everything you want to hear. It's like, this is your meeting to talk to us as staff about what help you need to move yourself forward to ultimately get an Olympic selection. So part of my role was, I wasn't necessarily in the meetings, but it's like, right, what clips do you want to show around what you're really good at? What's a couple that you may want to think, I need a little bit of help on my left-hand pass or my left side tackle or my tracking. I'm missing a few tackles on the left-hand side because perfect. So that's your rugby's done. Then they could spend some time thinking about that. So I think helping players be comfortable standing up and delivering in front of their peers has certainly been a huge achievement. And some of the guys that we're dealing with, Polynesian, Fijian, so very quiet by nature, but giving them the confidence to say, if you can get the work done, when you get a question, you've got to spend time being good. And I think just helping players understand what's available and then how deep they then want to go on that in terms of their own game is then really up to them. But I'm there to help facilitate them with that. I mean, the other thing we did this year was, well, not just this year, we've done it every year since I've been in the team. We have mini teams. So mini teams are teams within teams, but we use them to help us sort of regulate the group. So we've got 3 teams. So if I'm late to a physio appointment, then we'll get deducted mini team points. Or so it's not, if it's anything sort of huge misconduct, that's a very different
or the right
discussion.
Socks, that sort of shit.
If it's like general misdemeanours, like nothing horrendous. Or they forgot on a t-shirt, or it's just little things. But every Monday was mini team Monday. So I was part of a team called the Serial Killers when we first sort of got in, first inception, I suppose. So we used to do it like the NFL draft. So any new players would have to come in and do a video and pick me. So off the back of that, it was really good because there's some good bands of videos.
I was going to say, there must be a vault of some absolute comedy gold there somewhere.
Probably none for broadcasting either. We'll keep that in house certainly, But so this last year, I sort of became gamekeeper, So I then sort of ran the mini team challenges, which was great, because I was sort of delivering around the game, and then we'll roll into mini team challenge, and me, the manager, and Travis were sort of the 3 that sort of facilitated that. So guys are having fun. but then also there's a little bit of an underlying.
Yeah.
If you don't quite get things right, there's that. But it's not there to trip you up or be unpleasant, but just you need to make sure you're doing things right. And something we use a lot is our performance triangle. So if you imagine just a normal triangle at the top, we've got fun and connection. So that's, in any rugby team, that's easy because we can have fun, sing, generally have banter, that sort of thing. Then we've got edge and growth. Then we've got focused performance. So the edge and growth part is helping players stand up and present, those types of things. That's like, oh my gosh, that's like, oh, I feel really edgy doing that. And other little scenarios we used to do was we'd have everybody's name in a hat. Then we'd have a whole lot of different bits of paper with numbers on it. And then the third thing was an activity. So it could be, Tom, Carl. Oh, sorry, you go number first. So 2, pull out 2 names. So Tom and Carl. What's the task? So there's generally 3 or 4 team songs, a haka, or something on rugby. So you're like, oh, here we go. So you've got to do the haka. Well, away you go, So it's just a good way to help guys understand that there's some things I need to know and I need to check off and be really confident and deliver on.
Yeah.
Because if I've got to do one of those tasks in front of the group straight off the bat, well, that's your edge and growth straight away, which isn't on field, because on-field edge and growth is probably a lot easier than actually in the classroom or off-field. So certainly helping guys around that area of presenting, delivering, assisting them, or sometimes the 2 of us would present stuff just to make them feel a bit at ease. So it's never sort of ridicule or make them feel uncomfortable. It's like, but this is just good for your ongoing professional career, because you'll need to get up and speak and present around come across areas of the game.
Good, very good standard players by the sounds of it. Who's probably the best player that you've played with and or sort of coached or been around with? Who's the best player?
Best player? Yeah, I'd probably say in terms of sevens would be probably Tim Mickelson, Scott Curry. 2 great, sevens players. I've been around the game 15 years, co-captain the team, had a lot of success, and probably seen their growth over 8 years as well. I suppose players you admire on the circuit. I mean, people like Jerry Tuwai.
It's not bad, is it?
He's done a lot for Fiji rugby and winning Olympic gold twice as captain. It's not bad, no. And being lucky enough to be at Northern United, dealing with some wonderful players there. I don't want to sort of name drop, but I probably will.
Yeah.
And there's like Ants Perenisi, who was a prop for the Hurricanes. He was from Porra and Norths. Ended up playing for Bath for about 8 or 9 years. Farfili Levave ended up playing for Samoa as well.
Nice.
From Northern United. Alapati Leua ended up going on to play for Bristol, 100 games for Bristol, played for Samoa, played for Hurricane. Just trying to think. Buxton Popperlee is another one. Ended up playing for the Highlanders, All Black Sevens. Sean Treby played for the Highlanders, kicked on into Japan. TJ Perinara, we had him straight out of school from Porra.
Could you tell that when you saw him? Like when he sort of turned up?
He was probably destined for greatness then.
Could you tell he was going to be what he is now?
Yeah. I mean, he was just at 18, he was, good habits, good professional. It's just something he just really wanted to do all of the time. Then big Matt Lumanu, who ended up playing for Harlequins. There's just heat. There's just so many wonderful players.
Nice.
I've been lucky enough to. I mean, Brad Shields was in the Wellington under-20s team in 2011.
Yeah.
Nick Grigg ended up playing for Scotland.
Nice.
Second 5 for us. Ambrose Curtis played sevens. George Tilsley, I think he's at Argennes in France at the moment. I'm trying to think. Eric Sioni playing for Castle Prop. Yeah, obviously, so many players that kicked on into Super Rugby. Tomasi Alasiu ended up playing for Samoa. Sevens as well. Yeah, it's just been very fortunate. Matt Proctor's another one. He's in that 2011 team, becoming an All Black. Yeah, like just loads of good men, really. And even through that schools program, I did for 3 years, like Rike Ioane, Dalton Papali, Safra Moore, Sebu Reese. There's just so many that sort of spring to mind. But I mean, I was a very, very small part of their journey. certainly in the New Zealand schools
Yeah.
program, as a month-long 20s camps. Like rep stuff here is short. I mean, a rep season in NPC is sort of 12 weeks. So working with the Bay last year, doing some coaching was great fun. With Triple T and Kurt Eklund and Aidan Ross and big John R4. Obviously played for Bristol, played for Gloucester. He had a year with the Bay last year, and he was 40 then. So being able to just sort of chat with guys like that who have been around the game and had huge amount of success, just to sort of help me and I help them, has been really, really good. And just seeing the growth of young players from sort of Wellington or Bay of Plenty Academy, sort of moving themselves into provincial rugby and then ultimately into Super Rugby too, which is
nice.
But it's great. It's just good to see them.
So is there any player that you've come across that should have made it
carry
but
on,
didn't?
So you cross
paths. By the sounds of it, most you've come across that have in some. But are there any that have slipped through the net that through their own choice or their own mistake, or just kind of got lost to the system at the wrong time, or what?
Yeah. There's probably a couple. Like Villemoni Koroi, like world-class sevens player, had some injury, had some difficulty off field. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's all him, but he was someone that was in the sevens team. Had some injury, moved up the ranks quite quickly. And if we go back to what we've talked about before, and that sort of mental prep, helping young players become good professionals, and I think professional rugby is great, but there's a bit of mundaneness to it as well. It's very much rinse and repeat. It's sleep, eat, train, recover, do your detail work, and then keep going. So he was certainly someone that was very, very capable. He's still playing a bit of rugby, but it'd be good to see him back in an NPC jersey playing, whether it's for Otago or whoever it was. But he played a few games for Otago as well. He'd be one that springs to mind because we had him in the schools team in 2016.
So obviously with the NPC as well, you're not completely excluded, like in England and other countries. Once you've kind of fell out the academy system and sort of been really, you're lost, pretty much gone. There's not really a door open back. Whereas the NPC seems to be a little bit more open. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I suppose the way it's now, we always used to work. You play for your club, and then if you were good enough at club level or school. So if we use Bay of Plenty as the example, so if I go to Tauranga Boys and I'm a sort of promising young player, I'll get picked up in the under 16s, under 18s, under 19s, and that once they leave school, then there's an opportunity to sort of move into the academy. But generally, all the good young players will play under 19s, and then from under 19s they'll move into senior or Premier Rugby, but most of them will be playing Premier Rugby at under 19 level. And then from there, if they're good enough and you're playing club rugby or a senior, you'll get picked for Bay of Plenty. So the pathways, club, school, it's like the old county system where you'd play club or school, county, division, play for England. So that's essentially how it works here. So you play for your province. Then from your province, you've got an opportunity to get picked in Super Rugby. And then from Super Rugby, if you're good enough, you'll get picked up by the All Blacks. But if someone doesn't have a contract in Super, they can go back and play club to make sure they still have a contract in NPC.
Yeah.
So some guys work for half the year and then they're in the NPC for the other half. And then there's Super Rugby development teams or under 20s programs as well, which they can fall into. So, there's always a competition for someone to play in if they're not in a particular team. So there's always a development team under 19s at provincial level. So generally that will sit with guys that need some game time, guys coming back from injury, next up and comers come in.
Nice.
So the development side.
There is a bit of a recycle then, so that people don't get lost if they because I've discussed this many times on the pod with other people, and you kind of get to people do develop at different ages as well, and having that sort of setup, I don't know why they don't use it more. It clearly works for New Zealand, obviously.
Yes.
why can't that work in other places? But I think some of them are very closed-minded to the fact that it works for New Zealand, so they don't want to be looked like they're copying New Zealand. And there's probably sometimes there's that ignorance and arrogance of, they've managed it, but we don't want that because we'll be classed under the same bit. And rugby's rolled a lot by ego rather than what's best for the players and the system. And New Zealand as a whole within the game seem to have removed that. Obviously, the no dickhead policy at the All Blacks 15s. Does that no dickhead policy is literally up and down? Does that follow through the sevens as well and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's this sort of like growing mature men, like just making sure you're making good decisions. And then if people don't make good decisions, then it's, to what level of consequence is there? I mean, if it's just if it's getting a bit boozed and getting to bed early, then that's one thing. But if you're out in the public domain and the newspapers get hold of it, that's a very different discussion. So the key part around that is helping players understand that just because you don't know who somebody is, they probably know who you are. So you just need to make sure that, when you're out and about and you're wearing the fern, or even if you're not, you're just making sure you're holding yourself in a good aura, I suppose. And then if if you're going to have a birthday party or as a family gathering, then, be at home and enjoy your family time, and just make sure you're keeping off social media and making smart decisions around there. I mean,
I'm
now 47, and I think, we were talking before about being at university. I mean, if there was Snapchat and all that back then, goodness me. So, but, that's what young people today have got to contend with, haven't they? There's that sort of instanceness and uploading of things straight away, whereas, just helping them understand that you just need to, if you want to go and have a beer bomb, he's going to have a beer, and just do things you need to do and let off steam where you need to, but just make sure. So we're helping them through the program that they can make good decisions on things as well. So I've just been very lucky, worked with some wonderful players, worked with some sort of wonderful programs and people at NZR.
What's the next big plan then,
different
Tom? Obviously, we sort of discussed
around the country as well.
The All Blacks
Sevens
is sort of coming to the end of its time, or has that now sort of changed? Are you back in, or is there another bit that's potentially in the next phase of your career?
No, so I've finished with sevens. So I finished end of September. So just feeling hugely grateful for the opportunity with sevens. I mean, all up, I've had 11 years with New Zealand Rugby. Probably started the discussions. It was like 8 seasons, 2 Olympic cycles. The whole program's so well set up for the next person in terms of the automated programming, the resourcing that's available. Whoever gets the job is well set up to go to Dubai and Cape Town and do well. So probably what I'm enjoying the most is a little bit of time.
Yeah, brilliant.
Figure out my next move, doing a little bit of networking, doing things like this, which I've never done before. So thank you for having me on and letting me share my story.
Okay.
But just sort of figuring that out. Ideally, I'd like to get back on the grass. I want to get back coaching. Okay. That's really where I want to get to. And each year through sevens, I've always tried to coach a team. So back in 2019, I was with the Bay under-19s, and then 2020, I was with the Bay through that COVID period. 2021, I was with Canterbury doing a performance consultant job. So my role was, if they're playing Otago this weekend, if I'm the Otago coach, what are some of the things I'd be looking to do to beat Canterbury? So I was just to meet them on Zoom every Sunday and talk about what the numbers were telling me, a few clips, which has helped them for their week moving into that training block, ready for Otago on that Saturday. So then the next week I'll then get all the sort of scouting stuff done for the following week. So that was another sort of 15s role. 22 did nothing. And then last year was sort of assistant coach with the Bay. So I was doing attack support, but then all the non-selected guys came with me and we played like Auckland or whoever that weekly opposition was. So I think, getting back on the grass, I mean, there's still an opportunity to do a little bit of analysis, but more around probably supporting the
Is the
analyst
plan
that's
to
there
try and
about
get
what's
across back
available
more
and
into 15s and 7s, or is if
what
the
they can be
the
capable
right
of, I
sevens
suppose.
job sort of plonked in its lap,
But
would you look at continuing, or do you want to sort of get back
I
to the
think so.
15?
Yeah, good question. I suppose if there was another sevens role, it'd be
Nice.
a discussion to be had. But certainly, I'd like to get back into 15s. Yeah, a few options floating around here in New Zealand. I mean, back in the UK as well. So yeah, it's just sort of spending some time and just figuring that part out. And the good thing is, I've got some time now. Whereas sevens was great, but it's a busy schedule and there's plenty going on lots of the time. Which I know when Dubai's on the telly, I'll probably reflect and think, oh, gee, I will. I know I'll miss it. Yeah. But also knowing it's the right decision. It's time for someone else to enjoy sevens. It's time for someone to get around the world and enjoy what I've enjoyed, which I think's the key part. And I think if it wasn't for COVID, would I have been in the role as long as I have been? But having said that, I wouldn't change it either, because the things I've learned and the skills I've been able to gain through through something bad comes out something good. It was difficult, but we got loads of things set up and prepared, so I can sort of walk away, and just be glad that it's the program's ready to go, it's set up, and I've had a wonderful time.
As you say,
met some wonderful
you've
people.
Hopefully, left the jersey in a better place, and that's the All Black way.
Stories,
you've got to make sure you leave that jersey in a better place than you took it on. So that must give you enough just to say, right, that's the time. I'm ready. I can now move on and go and do something else and enjoy that. Dom, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, mate. I know that obviously it's your really early doors of getting on to nearly 10:30 out here now, so I've got a couple of bits to do in the morning. I could carry on with this forever, mate, because it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. Obviously, we'll keep in touch. Maybe there's another episode further down the line once we find out what you're on to next. But thank you so much for your time, mate, and jumping on. I know it's your first one, but you've done brilliant, mate. And there's plenty of things that people can take away from this conversation. And another door open in the game that people don't understand just about analysis. There is a lot that goes into it that nobody knew, but some people did it and some people don't. So it's what this pod's set up for, mate. So I just want to say thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me, and it's been great just to chat everything rugby and sharing some stories. And if there's someone else along their journey,
thank you so much for your time,
getting
mate.
results that they want, then that's all.
Cheers, mate.
What it's all about.
Brings yet another episode of Rugby Through the Leagues podcast to an end. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone that's been joined, watched it all the way through, listened to it all the way through. Hopefully you guys can take away a lot of information from a very, very top guest and a very knowledgeable rugby fan, analyst, player, coach, literally been there, done a lot of it, and what a place to be able to do it as well over in New Zealand alongside some top players that he's managed to do it alongside with. So just want to say thank you to Tom for jumping on. Obviously I know it was an early one for him and a late one for me, but we managed to get it round. There was a few storms, so at the back end of the interview there was a bit of an overlap, so we had a few issues with his internet, my internet and stuff like that. So the final edit wasn't the greatest that I've done, but we've managed to get the most of the information in there. So there was a little bit of an overlap, so I do apologise for that. But hopefully everyone got the rest of the main information out of Tom and agree that it's a really top guest that we've managed to get on. All Black Sevens involvement is phenomenal to listen to as it is, let alone get somebody that's been so involved for 8 seasons and 2 Olympic cycles. Not many can get away with that, and not many can do it for that long and at such a high level. So obviously Tom's now trying to figure out where he's going next, so hopefully that will open the door again for another pod later on once he's found out where he is and what he's going to do. But that leads on to next week. We're going to carry on with the performance side of it as well. So we've got another performance coach coming on at the minute. So we've got Dan Richmond coming on. Dan's been involved with Paraguay, he's been with Brazil, he's been doing a lot of different teams, and been around the block. His rugby CV is unreal. Another one that's going to really open a lot of knowledge of the game from different aspects, obviously, as well. Similar to sort of Warren and Russell in how they're set up, so really good guest to get on when we sort of get the interview done and understand where he's been and understand where Paraguay are going and Brazil and all different aspects. So another really top guest. But just want to say from me, thank you for joining, thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing, all of that good stuff. We want to carry growing the pod, carry on sharing that message from the bits not everyone else gets to see. So just want to say thank you and goodbye.